Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports, the intersection of sports and business. USA Today helps sponsor a conference, sports innovation conference, SEI. Clearly a very important conference in Vegas. Second week in July, year two. But there's so much more than that. And one of the keys we can do to support it is on the record to gather a whole bunch of different opinions from some incredible opinion leaders in the space. Danny Schayes, Utah Jazz, Nuggets, Bucks, Lakers, Suns, Heat, on and on, and with the Magic in 99. We're not going to cover all of that, but clearly a veteran NBA player, veteran family lineage. We'll let him tell the story. Danny, hey, how you doing?
I am doing great. And yes, my actually family history goes back to the founding of the NBA. So I'm officially a lifer, and from the black and white era. Luckily, my career was in color the entire time, so I'm not that old, but it's great looking back.
Well, obviously, your great lineage, and even as you describe it, very humble. Your dad, Dolph, selected to the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. What was it like growing up with him, tutored by him, talking basketball with him? Must have been a treasure.
Well, not only that, but I was around experiences that really didn't exist for other people. Remember, this is obviously pre-internet, pre-network. If you got to see a game a week, that was a big deal. Back in the mid 70s, people forget the NBA finals weren't even broadcast live. They were on tape delay to not compete with All in the Family and some of the other sitcoms that drew much better ratings. But my history goes back even before that. My dad, one of the founding stars of the league in the late 40s, came out of NYU, drafted by the Syracuse Nationals, now the 76ers, in 48. The NBA merged or became the NBA officially in 49, so he technically predates the NBA. And my neighbors growing up were guys like Johnny Kerr and Hal Greer and the Paul Seymour, those original Syracuse stars. Danny Schayes, who invented the 24-second clock, was a family friend. It was invented in Syracuse in the mid-50s. I was actually named after Danny. So have that connection to the game as well. So it was a very pivotal time in the league's history. Many people consider the 24-second clock the greatest innovation in sports, really saved basketball. My career, being around my dad, I got to be a ball boy for the Buffalo Braves, their expansion year 1970, now the Clippers franchise. So I was around working on the bench with Pistol Pete and young Lou Alcindor and that era players. Ernie D came right after that with the Buffalo team. Bob McAdoo, got to watch those guys and then play against many of them, the Bob Lanier and, like I said, McAdoo, that group, and then had an 18-year career myself. So really kind of expand the entire history of the league.
And to put some perspective on today, and then we'll get back to some of the NBA stuff, you're a host with Etan Thomas of the show called Center of Attention in Syracuse. Obviously, you took your basketball talents off the court, and I assume that's part of the kind of role model that emanates when you grow up in a journalistic-dominated community like Syracuse University.
Well, what was interesting is I actually started as a rock DJ. When I was in college, the guy who owns that station now, Ed Levine, had a small rock station. He was just out of Newhouse, and he let me do the Sunday night guest DJ spot a couple of times, and I really liked it and stayed with it. So I was a rock DJ in Syracuse for a couple of years. Then when I was with the Nuggets, I actually had a real rock DJ job at one of the top FMs in Denver, stayed on the media side, ESPN, Turner, did color for the Sonics when I retired. And actually, even when I was an active player, I'm the only player in NBA history to be the team's radio analyst while I was on the active roster. So interesting. I was actually calling my own games. I had ankle surgery, missed a few weeks, and the team's radio broadcaster was ill. So I actually subbed in as the color analyst for the Nuggets broadcast while I was on the roster. So I just went from the bench over 5 seats to the scorers table and called the game. So stayed on the business and media side after my career and didn't get into the coaching side as much. Basically, like I said, I got intrigued by business and stayed on that side of it.
Is that unique as far as you know it, that whole idea of calling color while you're still in the active roster? I know a lot of color commentators who are voices of teams where the teams own the broadcast rights are a little
Right.
worried about what happens, about what they say. This takes it to a whole new level, doesn't it?
Well, I wasn't, you've heard of player coaches, obviously.
Yeah, right.
So I was the first player broadcaster. I was injured, so I didn't actually like say, hold on a second, I have to go check into the game. I mean, it wasn't quite that active, but what was really interesting is I learned a lot calling the games while I was on the roster. Because now, number one, is I'm in the game most of the time. My coach, Doug Moe, was known affectionately as the most foul-mouthed coach in the NBA.
And also one of the best.
And one of the best. Doug was great.
Yeah.
I learned so much from him.
Yeah.
Here I had to sit next to him the whole game and listen to him. And I'm like, wow, is he like that when I'm in the game? Holy cow. So it was really a lot of fun. We joked and ribbed about it all the time. And every once in a while, he'd look over and give me one special, just just to let him know that he didn't forget about me. But yes, I think being a active player calling their own games is pretty unique.
What's the epiphany time where you said, okay, you've played 16 seasons, 18 total, but X number of seasons, and life after basketball is, and then you started focusing on life after basketball. When was that?
Well, I knew during my career that I was going to make whatever I was going to make. I was at the beginning of free agency, but never hit like the big money. That every player who ever retired said, "Boy, if I was just 5 years younger, right?" Because the money kept going up and up. I did well, not complaining. So I really worked to get into like understanding money investing. At the time, it wasn't like it is now with internet and information and all that. So it was a bit dicier. And didn't have a lot of time to necessarily start a business, but when I retired, I ended up getting into the seminar world as far as learning through seminar education. I met Robert Kiyosaki, the author of the Rich Dad series of books, at an event, and he kind of encouraged me to do some education. He was very big into financial literacy, and I wasn't going to go back get my MBA, but I started doing seminars, and my wife and I did probably 2 or 3 events a month for 3 years on everything from real estate to entities, personal development, stock trading, et cetera, et cetera. And, that's how I got into the business at the beginning. I was a good saver, so I had money in the bank, but as most athletes do, they have no income. I played till I was 40, so I wasn't really employable in the traditional sense, in that I had never worked a corporate job, even though I had a strong education. And so I really got into entrepreneurship. And then interestingly, several years later, I kind of backed into a few corporate positions, and one thing led to another, and kind of got me where I am today. And that is, working for a global technology firm, teaching sports teams how to use AI and technology effectively as we get into this next explosion of technology.
All right, we'll talk about that in a second. But I just wanted to kind of one more stroll down on-court memory lane.
Sure.
We look at the Nuggets and the Bucks and Lakers, Suns, Heat, and even Magic at a time. They all had a moment in the sun, really glorified history, winning championships. Some years would be great. When do you find out early in a season that it's going to be a great year, a bad year? How much is players? How much is coaching? How much is chemistry? Give me that overall perspective you have.
Well, chemistry is very underrated. I think at the league level. There's the turnover of players is as high as it's ever been. B is that the money is so big that right now teams are chasing the star factor. I find it interesting that in today's day and age, the 2 teams in the finals are among the lowest payrolls, and the team youngest and develop their players. So it's interesting how that dynamic all of a sudden switched from super teams, right, to now, wow, you can develop teams and actually win. As you know, NBA is a copycat league. You can generally tell relatively early how the team's going to do. We've had I'll tell you 2 specific seasons with the Nuggets. We made a big trade my 3rd year to bring in Calvin Nat, Fat Lever, Wayne Cooper, traded Kiki Vandeweghe. It was a great start at Portland. And Calvin Nat was really the key to that trade, although underrated. Big, physical, tough, gave our whole team basically courage and strength. And the first preseason game, we knew that everything fit together, had great chemistry. We were going to have a great year, ended up winning the division. Next year, unfortunately, he tears his Achilles the first game of the year. So that obviously was a unique situation, extreme situation, where things went south. But certain situations, when starting with the Jazz my first year, we didn't have a super talented team, but had really good chemistry. We were bumping along decent, then had a big losing streak that kind of took us out of it in the middle of the season. But that was a team where I learned it was a growth year, and at that time the Jazz were, kind of near the bottom of the pile, so they were developing. When I went to the Magic, it was at the end of the Shaq era. I replaced Shaq there. Still had a very strong team: Penny Hardaway, Nick Anderson,
Yeah.
Horace Grant. But we were one step below that top tier. And my year here in Phoenix, we knew going in we were the best team in the league. Played the entire season as the best team in the league. Unfortunately, Danny Manning blew out his ACL about the 2/3 point of the season, so it took us from easily the best team to that top tier 5 or 6. Ended up losing a heartbreaker game 7 to Houston the year Keem went nuts through the playoffs, and ended up swept the Magic in the finals. But that was a great team, great year. Every game was electric and exciting. So you can generally tell when things are going on and off the rails. And chemistry, like I said, a very underrated component.
Unanswerable question, but I'm asking anyway. Is basketball, the on the court part, better today than it was when you played or when your dad played?
Obviously, you have to adjust to the style of play. I think that the players today are molding into the current style, which is 50% of the shots are threes.
Yeah.
So the game has really transformed. I think it's exciting to watch again to a point. I mean, I think sometimes the three ball over dominates. Watching the playoffs now, especially the finals, where teams are really defending again and playing with teamwork, moving the ball. That's exciting to watch. And my dad's era, starting at the beginning, the players weren't nearly as big and physical, but the style of play was very passing game, a lot of movements, a lot of freelance, which was a fun brand of basketball to watch. It was a very physical game. My era, the 80s and 90s, obviously started with Bird, Magic, and then Jordan and Hakeem, and then all the way through Shaq and Kobe. We used to joke that's when dinosaurs ruled the earth. Every center, or every team was loaded with bigs. Every team played inside out. I played with 10, 20,000 point centers at the same time during that era. So when you look, that was the dominant premier position. The 3-point line was something you do when you're down 7 with a minute to go. You didn't build around it. You might have a kick out 3, but there wasn't you didn't run to the 3-point line.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Now the teams have used analytics to say, well, if I shoot 38% from 3, that's better than 50 from 2. So let's only shoot 3s, right? So now every player, whether you're a point guard or a center, you got to shoot 3s to be in the league. And so that has certainly morphed. I think that, a team like Oklahoma City, which is probably among the least 3-point active teams, especially in the finals, is something that may bring that back a little bit more. Get to the rim, get to the free throw line, get high percentage shots. So we'll see. It's like I said, it's a copycat league, and the teams that win kind of drive the style.
Put AI to the side for a minute, because we are going to finish with a thunder, because that's obviously what you spend a lot of your time on. The structure of the NBA today versus a while ago, it's undergone a tremendous metamorphosis. But it is interesting. You refer to your history of your dad, and the Pacers and OKC are the two smallest markets collectively, a little over 2 million, since, as you say, the dinosaurs from Fort Wayne and Syracuse and Rochester ruled the earth in the early 50s as well. So it proves today that small market teams can win in the NBA.
Well, if you look at the teams that are doing well, right? I mean, New York had a good year. The Lakers are the Lakers, right? The Celtics are the Celtics. But outside of that, right? I mean, you have Minneapolis, who is strong. At times you had Utah, who is strong. Now, like I said, Indiana, you've had Detroit, who went through their phase. Orlando went through their phase a couple of times. And so there's no real magic, to it. Like I said, chemistry is very underrated. The hard part is keeping a group together, because free agency is such an omnipresent factor. As you know, the contract lengths have gotten shorter and shorter over time due to collective bargaining and owners not wanting to get committed to these long 8, 9, 10-year deals. So the double-edged side of that sword is that now your stars get to be free agents faster. And so again, tougher to keep teams together. 2 supermax guys will kind of wipe out your salary cap pretty quickly. As Phoenix has found out, highest payroll in the league, don't make the playoffs. So it's it's not a perfect system. And like I said, teams that are starting to understand that, hopefully that pendulum will swing to really getting into the development, teamwork concept of getting involved in your team.
All right, let's talk about AI. SEICon is big in AI, July 7 through 10. Everybody, it's a major thought leadership convention and great opportunity. So talk a little about your specific role with AI and your perception of AI in general. Should we embrace it or be scared of it?
No, actually, you should absolutely embrace it, especially in this context. And the reason is as sports teams' valuations skyrocket, and we only have to look at this month's headlines. Celtics go for a $6 billion valuation, then the Lakers at almost double that at 10, highest valuations of any team in any sport in history. To generate that kind of value, you have to keep up with the revenue. And where does that come from? Most teams sell out their arenas, so any increase there is incremental. You know who they are. You have a physical person in a physical seat. But look, you sell them a ticket, you feed them, you park their car, you're pretty much done. You sell them a jersey once a couple times a year. And so you raise prices a little here and there, but that's incremental improvement. Most teams, less than 1% of fans will ever set foot in the arena. So you have 99%, 100 to 1 of your fan base. You have no idea who they are or where they live. Their Nielsen ratings is in the past. Now with AI, for the first time, you can create a very personalized, hyper-personalized relationship through streaming, through interaction, through social media, through your websites. And so now you can interact with fans out of market, out of country, by personality, by language, by by their viewing habits. You can now use AI to 2.5 hours, long time to watch a game. If I'm in London at 3 a.m, now you can text me a 10-minute, 20-minute version of the game, within minutes of the game ending. And so now I can interact on a personal level with fans in a way that I never could before. And that's where you're going to see the massive growth in the next phase. And that's going to be all AI driven, because like I said, now I can, if I want to broadcast in Spanish, in the past, I had to get 4 guys sitting there in Spanish doing the game, right? Now I can broadcast in 100 languages with a touch of a button, and with my top team doing it, right? My broadcasters, right? Instant translation. Like I said, I can now interact email and everything else I do, fan engagement, team engagement, player engagement, all in whatever language, whatever culture, instantaneously. So that's going to be, the next big thing, is being able to create hyper-personalized relationships with that 99+% that'll never step foot in your arena.
Now, the good thing about that, obviously, is it keys right into the NBA's strong suit, which is sharing best practices. There's not a better league in the world at sharing best practices than under Adam Silver. We know that. But that's basically fan experience. Are we concerned about the Chinese wall or the competitive advantage relative to on-course metrics if some people can figure out how to use AI better than others, or just as a call for some teams to join the other teams and get smart about it?
Well, look, the key is the content creation, right? The content creators hold all the cards. Everything else is AI gymnastics, but the key is what's coming out of the content. That's your players on and off the court. That's the game action. Obviously, all-star playoffs. Your sponsor interactions, those kind of things. So the content creators are the ones driving the action. The AI providers will be the ones, kind of maybe shaping that relationship with the fan base. But at the end of the day, content is king. And pro sports, has 2 massive advantages. There's a fire hose of content, right? 20 games a night between, whatever games are going on, hockey and basketball during the winter, baseball in the summer, football in the fall. So there's always something going on. And that's just those 4 majors, obviously, tons of other content. And then there's, great player interaction. And so you have that fire hose of live content. Number 2 is that the game needs to be, its power is that it's live, right? It's not a sitcom, which I can watch at any time. So the value in the sponsor engagements is because of its, the live nature. And I think that's why more and more money is going out of, some of these other vehicles, streaming movies or TV shows into live sports, because again, that's the one place you pretty much watch the commercials.
Yeah, and your experience at Syracuse is first rate, obviously. From the opinion leader perspective, Syracuse UNLV have created some kind of a little rivalry off of SEICon and otherwise.
Right.
SEICon, a tremendous event last year, even bigger this year. Excited about it?
I am to get into obviously sports entertainment and innovation.
Yeah.
The innovation part is something that I'm just very excited to be a part of. Being on the kind of the leading edge of where things are going. As I mentioned, many players go into the coaching side because they know the game, right, and know how to coach. I was very intrigued on the business side. Near the end of my career, I was in the did a lot of collective bargaining, was one of the lead player negotiators, and got deep into the league's business through that collective bargaining experience, and was very intrigued by that. So I stayed on the business side. I ran the Retired Player Association, did work for an economics firm doing kind of what I do now, but economics projects. That's team valuations back then, variable and dynamic ticket pricing, et cetera, some other things as well. In all the pro leagues. And so, now being on the technology side, being able to really drive both the next level of fan engagement, but obviously the end game is to generate revenue for teams and leagues, and as well as just tremendous experiences for the fans. And that's that great value proposition, right? The teams generate great content, the fans get super engaged and energized by it, and then they monetize that. And that's, I think, just a perfect relationship that brings that excitement. And frankly, the world could use some excitement right now, right?
Yeah, we totally agree. Your mouth to God's ears. One more question. So in the 70s, after law school, tried to figure out a way to get involved in the sports business. Then I found out the only way you were called an agent or sports lawyer is that you found some athlete that would call you that. Now there are 473 sports law, marketing, administrative, business courses. Would you opt for the good old days where you created blaze your own trail, or today where everything is really defined, but there's a lot more competition?
Well, the trough is massive that feeds the pro sports world, as you mentioned earlier. And so on the one hand, there's a lot more established things to do, like to plug into, especially if you're starting out. So you can learn, get established, make contacts, network. But the world is unlimited, and the sports world is unlimited as far as what the potential is. And now the way the growth is happening, using these new technologies in so many ways. Fan engagement obviously is one. Building new revenue models for teams, corporate efficiency, analytics, between game. The league now, as you know, is broadcasting in full 3D due to some of the technologies where they're, using, dozens of cameras to capture all the movement on the court, and then, create that, 3D virtual reality version of that. Mixed reality, where you can actually working on a project to train referees by taking that content, and referees can wear a set of glasses and be on a court with full holographic players so they can learn the game, using that type of technology. So there's so many interesting ways where, where technology is going to drive innovation. So there's really no limit to how much innovation there is. But again, now with that trough being so big, it's great for young people to come in and have so many places to learn the business.
Wonderful talk. Oh, one more question. So you and your dad, straight up universal bragging rights, perpetual universal referees, nobody in favor of one of you. Who wins one-on-one?
Well, I was much more physical as a player, and but he had the range, so I think it'd be a great matchup. What was very interesting, though, he played in his era 1,059 games, which was a record at the time, because in his era there weren't long careers because there wasn't enough money to play forever.
Yeah.
So the day of my 1,060th game, naturally I called him and said, "Hey, Dad, it's good. I'm playing my 1,060th game today." And he had a big chuckle, but I have to admit he was mad, but he got over it. So
yeah, I'm sure he got over it. Look, the bottom line is the sport and the business is fantastic because you were both involved, his memory, and you're taking it to the next step. And what a political answer, because the game changed. You can't answer that question. They're two different things. Danny Schayes, absolutely excited working with you. Looking forward to seeing you at SEICon in just a couple of weeks. Sports
Me
Professor
too.
Rick
I'm
Horrow.
excited to be there. Come on out and say hello.
Absolutely. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, speak with you soon.
Danny Schayes has some real perspective for us going forward, and we'll take it to the next step. Looking forward to that SEICon conference. Opening drive, 1 through 5. How about 5 to watch coming up in the next couple of weeks? Number 1, Formula One team sponsor deals need to be finalized, but the Formula One deals pull in an average of about $6 million in sponsorship revenue last season, about 8 times more than an average NFL team receives. Formula One teams collectively over $2 billion. NFL 2.4, but divided by 32 versus divided by a smaller number. You see what I'm getting at. Worldwide global reach, high-end sponsorship, world television, all adds up to incredible long-term vision for Formula One. That's number 1. Number 2, the CBA between the owners and the players. Marty Walsh, Gary Bettman, do it again. Friendship, obviously Marty Walsh, the labor secretary under President Biden, but also very significant commitment of political, Mayor of Boston, hockey, NHL Players Association, and the ability to make a deal through 2026, 2025, 2026, current deal. Next deal, an extension, 84 games expanded by 2. The preseason reduces, deal limits on contract length, max 7 years for signings and 6 years for new term deals. Eliminate deferred salary structures, mandate each team carrying a full-time emergency goalie, which happens sometimes if people get cut short, introducing a salary cap for the postseason, the 50-50 revenue share, an incredibly important principle for the NHL, compounded by the fact that Gary Bettman and Marty Walsh know how to make a deal. That's number 2. Number 3, women's sports. We've talked before about the numbers, but now we talk about men's soccer as a complement to the Women's World Cup. The Club World Cup, Game 1, Messi, Inter Miami. We have to see what attendance will look like long term, but TNT have 959,000 viewers for the first game, 238,000 on TBS, and obviously Messi is a big draw. But with all of the discussion about the glut and CONCACAF, and are we ready for the World Cup in the US and Mexico and Canada, this is a big deal. Obviously, now the knockout rounds start, and the numbers should be even higher. That's number 3. Number 4, esports. Australian broadcast network 7 acquired the rights to esports for all 34 matches for this year's Esports World Cup held in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The opening ceremonies, the full match slate, the broadcast commentary. It shows 7's strategy to be an international sports leader, but even more important, it becomes a big deal as we focus on world esports heading to maybe the 2032 Olympics. Not sure, but probably so. Number 10, finally, X Games launches a broader-based sports tech startup, or more specifically, Jeremy Bloom. Remember him creating a legitimate disruption when he was a Colorado football player and he wanted to ski as well, and the NCAA said no and obviously settled that. He, Olympic skier and CEO of X Games, has founded a new Boulder-based AI sports tech company called the Owl AI. The Winter X Games in Aspen, the platform accurately predicted outcomes in events like Snowboard Superpipe and offered real-time multilingual commentary. It's designed to augment human judges, which is some would say, slippery slope. Most would say an incredible positive for all sports that require some judging. It is a tool and an aid at worst, and maybe an opportunity to standardize at best. We'll have to see, but kudos to Jeremy Bloom and kudos to this venture. We'd like to thank Danny Schayes for participating in our interview today and talking about the future of the NBA and entrepreneurialism and SEICon. We'd like to thank Callie Kazire for putting the show together as always. Like to thank you for listening and watching. Busy week, even bigger, compounded by all of these events, as well as the summer breaks, but also summer mega events all over the globe. Sports Desk of Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports. Sports professor, looking forward to speaking with you soon and seeing you soon.